I'm excited to share part 2 of my chat with Julie. There's nothing like compatriots talking. This could have taken place on set in our trailers. We take you behind the scenes like no one else could. But first, a word from our sponsors. Attention collectors and connoisseurs of all things creepy. The Pre-Code Horror Authentic Editions Kickstarter is your ticket to own history. Horror history, that is. Authentic Editions is reviving the most notorious and long-banned horror comics from the Golden Age, with breathtaking facsimile editions. Think Suspense Comics #3 and Chamber of Chills #19, reproduced with obsessive attention to detail, down to the original 10-cent cover price and vintage ads, then printed on period-appropriate paper using classic techniques. These aren't just comic books. They're a time machine to the heyday of horror that freaked out parents, triggered Senate hearings, and got these comics banned. If you're a fan of vintage art, horror, or collecting a piece of comics history with stories to tell, this is your holy grail. Back the Kickstarter today and bring these iconic tales back from the dead, because missing out would be a grave mistake. Mwahaha. Just search Pre-Code Horror Authentic Editions for the Kickstarter page.
And what about working with Mark Metcalf? Talk a little bit about working with the Master and what Darla's relationship is to the Master at this juncture.
I never saw him without makeup on.
Ever?
Because his prosthetic took forever. But I knew who he was because I had seen Animal House.
So you knew what was under there.
I knew what was under there. But I thought, he was really gross looking with that prosthetic on. That prosthetic was disgusting. I'm just going to be honest. But he was so nice. I remember we spent a lot of time talking on set just about work and being an actor in Hollywood, because I was still kind of new to LA. And he just was so cool. But it was hard to look at him with that face. It was awful. They made him look so gross. But, we really worked on establishing our relationship because, again, he made me. Mm-hmm. So,
and you're his favorite, right? You're his favorite. Yeah.
So I'm his favorite, little possession, plaything. And he was my big daddy.
And what about working with Brian Thompson?
Oh, I just remember he was so big. He's a big guy. He's huge. And I just remember being scared because of his size. I'm like, this guy is huge. He's huge. It's like, whoa, can you even carry us in a 2-shot?
So when you did the whole showdown at the end, did you do some of the stunt work? How much of that did you do? And also, you have that cool stuff with the guns and it's sort of like the Western shootout. What was that like to shoot and how much of the stunts did you do?
I did as much as they would let me and as much as I could. I do remember they brought me up for rehearsal and they were like, we need you to just jump from the floor to the pool table. Do you think you can do that? And I was like, I don't know. And I was too afraid to try it in rehearsal because I was like, if I miss, I'm going to be too scared to do it when the camera's rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So I just watched the stunt woman do it a couple times. I think having the background of being an athlete, I watched the mechanics of it. And then I have a hard time performing when the cameras aren't rolling. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I just basically watched her do it a handful of times and talked through the mechanics of it and decided not to try it in rehearsal because if I fell or if I missed, then I would not have the nerves to do it when the cameras were rolling. So they rolled the cameras and I did it, no problem. But it was a pretty high jump. It's pretty high. It just didn't become a standstill. But I had the adrenaline of cameras are rolling and I better not fuck this up. So I better fucking do it. And that's basically my mantra.
And all of a sudden you became bionic with that, adrenaline. Right?
That's usually my mantra when it comes to stunts, which it is, all right, you better not fuck this up. Just go fucking do it. Just fucking do it. Just fucking do it. Sorry to anybody listening who doesn't like the F word, but that's what goes through my head before I do a stunt is like, don't fuck it up. Just fucking do it.
Nike had that as but then they thought, we'll get rid of that and just it works with part of it. No.
Yeah. When I read that scene, I was like, this is fucking brilliant. Like, why wouldn't a vampire? Like, why waste my energy? I can just shoot her. Like, what am I doing? Like, wasting energy. Like, I'm like, this is fucking brilliant. This is brilliant. A vampire and guns. There you go.
In that scene, very much palpably is the X, that sort of catty thing that is coming out of your character in relation to Sarah's character, and everything is definitely full blown in this sequence.
And also just the heartbreak.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to ask you about, because you strike this balance where you're being such a badass, and then when he stakes you, it's such a tender and surprised and hurt, and the realization of that, and it's such a beautiful switch, and it's really a profound moment that you have there. And how was that to shoot? Because I know with stunts there's often a lot of stuff like you have to stand right here when they're doing the staking and all. How were you able to infuse it with all of that?
With David, sometimes with your partner you don't want to talk too much because you don't want to give too much away. And that's kind of how David and I worked, which was we did keep some secrets of our characters to ourselves because we didn't want to ruin the magic of what was naturally there. So you kind of keep a little bit of that to yourself. You don't want them to be expecting something. You don't want your scene partner to expect.
No, you want it to live in it and have the experience. And there's things that, also talking about something makes it cerebral instead of having the experience and going through it together.
I imagined what it would be like if your child kills you. The heartbreak of it. I created you. I raised you. We were a thing. And now you literally stabbed me in the back. Literally.
Yeah.
And killed me. That just that shock that he would do that to me. And I was bummed. I was so sad I got killed.
I heard you in an interview where you said that you always have this oh shit moment that you think you're going to get fired. One, does that still happen? Has that lessened now as you've been doing it longer? I think it's such a quintessential actor's experience. I remember the first equity show I did. My boyfriend at the time said, Juliet, they're not going to fire you. You don't have an understudy. There's no one else to cover you. Like you're on opening night. What do you think? I was like, oh, okay. I guess you're right. Is that something that still happens to you? Do you want to just talk to everybody a little bit about what that oh shit moment's like?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, the process of being an actor and getting a job, because first you focus on the audition, and then you have to test for it. Then you're focusing on that hurdle. Then you get the job. Then you go and you do the first table read, and then you can get axed after a table read.
Table read. Yeah, absolutely.
That happened to me once.
I forget
what show it was, but it has happened to everybody. Well, not to you, but to me, it happened. So I used to live in fear of it. What's going to happen? Oh my God, what would happen if? What would happen if? Now that I'm a lot older, you can't control it. So if the part is meant for you, it's meant for you. And if it's not, it's not. And I'd rather not be playing a character that people involved in the show didn't think I fit. It's like shoving a square peg into a round hole and make it work. I remember I did a movie with Sid Sheinberg. He used to run Universal, but he had like this company called the Bubble Factory. That was one of his first movies he was producing after leaving Universal. And, Sid was pretty old at that time. And I remember he came up to me the first day on set and he was like, your audition tape was so funny. That scene where you got caught in the refrigerator, it was hysterical. And I was like, oh, that's not me. You hired the wrong actress. And I started laughing.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, that was not, I never did a scene where I was stuck in a refrigerator. And I just thought it was hysterically funny. And his face was like, ah. And then after that, I swear through the whole shoot, I was picked apart with I couldn't do anything right. It was the way I looked, my voice, everything was picked apart. And because I think they realized like they meant to hire somebody else and they hired me instead.
Oh my gosh.
And,
That does not sound fun.
it was a learning experience. I survived. I'd rather know early on that it's not going to work out. So I started changing my perspective of the audition process back then too, which was I'm auditioning them as much as they're auditioning me. Meaning I need to know I speak the same language as they do. The producers, the director, there's a writer there, that we're all on the same page of how this character is going to be played and what the tone of the show and all of that. That's important to me. Nowadays, that all of that's done with in the industry, because now with auditions being self-tapes, you don't have that. You can't read the room anymore like you used to be able to. And it makes it very difficult now. But I used to look at auditions as, well, this is my time to see, is this something I want to commit my life to? Is this a show that I want to do 6, 7 seasons of with these people?
Yeah, it's like a dating process. And it's also like, for me, I've always thought of an audition as obviously to fit into the holes. But what would make it really exciting for me to do this for 7 years? Like, what am I passionate about? They can always give me an adjustment. You can't get into someone else's head. Like, what makes me excited about what makes the character tick?
I've never really approached auditioning as what do they want. It's always,
you can't.
Always been, what do I want to play? Like, this is my time to produce, direct, star, do hair and makeup, wardrobe. This is my time to really create a character. And then I'm showing you that this is the character I want to play on your show. Like, this is what I want to play. And sometimes I've hit it out of the park that way. And sometimes I've made choices that are so wrong. But I've gotten work out of it because they're so impressed with me coming in with such a strong choice and such a strong take that they're like, okay, not really what we were thinking, but we like what you did there. Maybe and they'll remember you and they'll bring you in for something else or for the next show or something. So
I've even had stuff actually rewritten, like, oh, we hadn't thought of, and like changed ultimately in that way too. So I agree with you. You make really strong choices and then it's memorable, right? There was something else that sort of popped into my mind, which is once I am sort of immersed in my choices, the stuff that you can call like the helicopter critic goes away because you're doing, your job and you've made really strong choices. But have you experienced that? Oh, I might not be up for this, because I was thinking about how, I produced a play and Dev and I would go for 6 months. We went and we got extended and extended and extended. And apparently every single night on the way to the theater, I would say, as if it was a new thought, I don't know if I have the show in me tonight. And then Dev would say, you say this every night. And I'd say, oh, no, but tonight it's different. And then, of course, it wasn't different. And I went and I did it. Have you had that experience as well in your life and your career?
I played Darla for so many years, but I also did so many other jobs because I wasn't a regular on the show. So I had the freedom and flexibility to move and do other work, that there would be this when they would bring me back or write me in, I'd be, oh, do I even remember her?
Like, who is this? I got to get back in this character.
Yeah, and there would be that moment of like, I don't know if I can find her again. Like, where is she? Where did I put her? And then you show up on set and she's there.
She's there.
She just shows up magically.
Well, I think, Geraldine Page, who was nominated for 8 Oscars and won one, I think she was nominated for 4 Tonys. She talked about all of the stuff that you're talking about. So I think that, it's definitely a universal thing with actors. So you said high school was an incredible experience for you and where you really bloomed. But in junior high, do you have any junior high as hell stories or experiences? Since the theme of the show is high school as hell, is there something that you related to in your own life experience?
Oh, yeah. Junior high was awful for me. I had cut my hair and I got a perm. I had braces and I had to wear headgear.
I had the same perm and headgear. Like, that was just the worst time.
It was the worst. 6th grade was really bad. I remember being in the lunch line and these older kids, like 8th graders, were like, are you a boy or a girl? Because you look like a boy. And I remember being devastated, like absolutely devastated. And after that, I begged my mother to let me wear makeup to school. And if you look at my junior high school pictures, I am wearing more makeup than any drag queen on RuPaul's, because I had this short, permed hair and I had tons of makeup on. So people would know I was a girl. I was like obsessed with that. And then I didn't wear jeans. I stopped wearing jeans. I only wore dresses.
And was it from that one comment, or was that sort of a running thing? Was it basically that poisonous seed, or felt like it was a criticism?
And it was a lot of that criticism. And then also, I mean, headgear was the worst. What were they thinking? Why?
Did you have to wear yours during the day or just at night?
I had to wear it during the day.
You did? Oh my God, I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like, it just was awful. It was awful. And so I grew my hair out, wore a ton of makeup, never wore pants or jeans, was always in a dress or a skirt. There were these two girls in, I think it was 8th grade. They were like the two girls who, so I got my braces off and like got like prettier. And these two girls, they were like from the wrong side of the tracks. You know what I mean? They were rough. And they decided they didn't like me. And so they would threaten me, like they were going to beat me up and they were going to hurt me and all this stuff, to the point where like I wouldn't go to lunch to eat lunch. I'd go to the science room and like do science experiments because I was like, I'm too afraid I'm going to get beat up. And they would like chase me out of the school and like scream like, don't come back tomorrow, we're gonna kick your ass, as my mother would be picking me up. And then the one girl got sick, and my dad was a doctor, and she got sick and he saved her life.
Wow.
So the other girl saw me in school and she's like, you're off the hook.
Oh, it only took saving a life, right, to not be a mean girl and bullying. And what about in other times of your life? Have you felt like an outsider trying to fit in different points in your life?
I think I prefer living a little bit on the outside of stuff. I mean, I like to call myself I'm an introverted extrovert. I don't crave having to be at everything or be the center of attention. I don't crave that. It's nice when you are part of that, but I find I am more of an observer. I kind of like to watch dynamics play out amongst groups of people versus being the dynamic in the group. I think as actors, observation is a huge part. It's a huge tool for us, observing human life and human interaction, all of that.
The vampires in season 1 feel almost like a clique in the dynamics between you guys. Was that something that just evolved out of the way that you were spending time together? Obviously, the scripts. What are your thoughts about that? Because it really did feel sort of like that pack and that clique was, you guys had that.
I think that vampires are kind of cliquish. I mean, they're just cliquish, They don't really want to hang out with werewolves, right? They're not like...
It's funny you say that, because Kristen Bauer said on the set of True Blood, for whatever reason, all the different supernaturals would eat lunch together. So the werewolves would all eat together, the vampire. I was like, oh, we didn't really have that. We all hung out. But she said they very much stayed in their groups when they were at lunch as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think vampires are cliquish. They like their own. My theory on vampires is they think they're better than everybody else. Any other demon, they think they're the most powerful, the most desirable, the most beautiful,
the most dangerous.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be a vampire. Everybody wants to be them, and they are the
top of the food chain.
Yeah, I mean, why would you want to be a werewolf? Like, seriously, all that hair, all that really, it's just no. And then you're only a werewolf when it's a full moon, right? And you got howl. Like, it's not sexy. Werewolves are not sexy. Vampires are sexy beings. They're very sexy and they know it. So we're just,
Well, also, if you're picking, who you want to spend eternity with, it probably becomes a little bit of a clique because that's a long commitment. It's like a long time to say, I'm gonna hang with you forever, right?
Right. And that's why, Darla spent a long time. It took her 400 years before she sired Angel. She didn't have a previous sire. At 400 years old, she was like, I think I want a life partner now. I think I'm ready.
How much was sexuality and sensuality an integral part of Darla and bringing that to her?
Oh, I think it was everything. I think the aphrodisiac is the feeding. To me, there's no gender between vampires. Basically, food is sex to them, eating is sex to them, and it's sexy. I mean, they're biting the neck, that's sexy, and feeding, it's sucking the blood. Like, that's just all sexy. Like, vampires are very sexy and sensual and vicious and dangerous. And I hope I never meet one.
What is your favorite scene from season 1, if you had to pick one?
It's hard because I think there's two. I think the opening scene, because it's such a twist and it's such a shocking moment. The very first scene. And then I think Darla's, the gun showdown and her death at the hands of Angel.
I'd throw in also, I'd do 3. I'd say also the one where you're in his apartment as well, if we can go more than one.
Yeah. It's so hard to pick favorites. I always say, like, when people ask me, pick your favorite, blah, 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 it's like asking somebody to pick their favorite child.
Sophie's choice.
Yes. But it's really difficult.
Were you surprised to get the call after your character had been killed to come back as Darla? How did that happen? And were you very surprised when that happened?
For the flashback, it was exciting. I mean, I was surprised. And when I first got the call, I was confused because I was like, wait, she puffed. How is she coming back? And then they're like, no, it's a flashback. And I was like, so it was very exciting. And then, you go to the wardrobe fitting first. And my wardrobe in that flashback scene was so incredible. So incredible. And just, I think we shot that on Universal on their backlot, which is just, that's what you think all of Hollywood is going to be like.
Yeah, and it's been used in so many famous movies as well. We got to shoot there again on other sequences, and yeah, it's an amazing place to work.
The barmaid in that scene, do you know who that is?
Who is it?
Christina Hendricks.
I just worked with her husband, was the Steadicam operator on Bosch Legacy, and they just got married. They'd been engaged, and yeah. And by the way, so when you were called for Angel, how much of the backstory did you know that Darla had been a prostitute? Did you know all of that beforehand?
No, I didn't know anything. So I came up in my head that she was one of the Greek Furies. Was it the Furies? Like one of those, like she was from ancient Greece. Then they were like, no, she's not that old. And I was like, oh, okay. So then, well, she's got to be a hooker. Like, she's got to be a hooker. Like, come on, she's a hooker. Like, I really was like, she has to have been that. It just makes sense. And so then they came up with that story. But I was pushing for it.
So do you think that you sort of saying that's what it felt like Darla was helped lead it in that direction in terms of what ended up ensuing?
Yes. There's a lot of things I said on set that came into play.
I know.
When we talk
Actually, you told me that later, and I was like, wow, I should have been suggesting stuff too.
I was always making suggestions about her because she was so old. There was so much backstory. And then trying to put all the pieces together and listen, all those flashbacks, we shot those all out of order and sequence and trying to remember her, like, did this happen before that or this or that? And just trying to keep her timeline in check was, so I was always throwing out ideas for her. It's always things that I wanted to play. By the way, I do that for every job.
I think that's amazing. I've never really done that. And now I'm thinking about it.
I'm so excited about this book series that was written for me. It is Big Finish's biggest production to date. It's so special, wickedly funny. I cannot wait for you to listen. Every vampire thinks the rules don't apply to them.
We investigate vampires who break the rules.
Turns out even vampires have police.
We're called Officer of the Night.
Katrin, my boss. If you believe the stories, she's 1,000 years old.
Magnus, darling.
Sorry.
Magnus is a youngster, barely 100. So he takes care of the information superhighway for me. The entertainment. He looks meek, but no one tears a head off like Magnus.
And I'm Jane.
She's our servant.
I'm your human liaison, keeping the peace between you and the authorities.
We trust you. Don't we, Magnus?
Of course.
So?
Vampires, we are watching you. Feed carefully.
Or you'll be hearing from the Office of the Night.
Finished? Good. Come, Magnus. We have immortal laws to protect. And we're running low on cat litter. Polygissy, Cushingly, and Mummy's whole gang. Season 1 is available now. You can also pre-order the bundle for Season 1 and 2 now. Season 2 comes out in March. Available at bigfinish.com.
Why do you think Buffy has such legs with the audience? You know, during pandemic, it was trending again. It's more popular now even than when it was airing, when it was popular. Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think for a couple reasons. One being it's a very timeless theme of fitting into high school, high school politics, like fitting in all of that. Two, I think vampires are sexy. I think the world that was created as well was done very thoughtfully. I've worked on a lot of different genre shows, and when the world is not created as thoughtfully as the world was created for Buffy, you lose the audience. And I think the writers did such an amazing job being thoughtful in how they created that world. And if there was a rule and then they broke it, what the payoff would be. They didn't just haphazardly break rules just for a shtick or like a set piece or something. They really stuck to their show Bible, the rules of the world. And that is so important when you're creating a genre show. I think in genre television, you're able to tell stories that you can't necessarily tell when it's just regular people. And it's also a show that, the people that watched it when it aired now have children and they're sharing it with them, because it is a show that you can sit down and watch as a parent and as a young person, and you all get something out of it. And we don't have a lot of those shows. Mm-hmm. You don't make a lot of those shows where it's made for both audiences. So that's why I think it resonates so much. And vampires are sexy, let's just say. They're hot.
Do you have any memorable fan encounters that you can share? Anything that's been kind of fun or trippy that's happened?
I remember one time shopping in New York City, and I think it was at Urban Outfitters or something, and I was shopping around, and there was a husband and wife there, and one was standing on one side, and one was on the other, and the wife said, "Oh, honey, that's that actress Julie Benz," and he goes, "Oh, she's so much prettier in person." And the wife was like, they had this whole conversation about me, like right in front of me.
As if you weren't there.
Yeah. And I just was like, hi, it's nice to meet you.
The Buffy fan base is, I think, and maybe I'm biased, but the most incredible fan base.
They're the best. They're the absolute best.
And there's such a loving, smart, wonderful group of people. It's we're so fortunate.
Listen, I've seen kids grow up. I was at a convention in Niagara Falls, and there was this woman there with her daughter. Her daughter was 17, and she's like, "Do you remember meeting me?" And they showed me a picture, and the daughter was like a baby, and I had a picture holding her. And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Can we reenact this photo?" But like, just to know that the fan base just grows and continues, and everybody is so lovely.
Buffy fans are the best. Who has been the best teacher in your life?
Oh, I know who the worst. I got the worst one.
Okay, we'll go with the worst first, and then we'll think of the best after.
No, I'll do the best first.
Okay.
I had a couple really good teachers in high school, especially Mr. Blower, who was he was the English teacher, but he also, his name is Mr. Eric Blower. You're listening. He was the English teacher, but he also did the theater program. And he made me direct a play in high school, which was very difficult. I was not prepared, but he pushed me out of my comfort zone because he knew I was going to go off and be an actor. And he's like, you should learn how, you should direct and direct this play. And he helped kind of guide me through that process. And he was awesome. I recently, I went back a couple of years ago to the high school and I wanted to say hi, but he had retired and I didn't know that. And so I didn't get to see him.
So he sounds like he was very inspiring.
He was. He really was. And then I would see my guidance counselor in high school when I met with her and said, I want to study acting. I want to do this. Nobody ever said I was crazy. That's the thing. No one ever said, oh, that's a crazy idea. She was like, okay, let's figure this out. And let's, so she helped me pick the schools to apply to and helped me with the letters and then all that. And to be able to be a high school student and say, I'm going to go after this pipe dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's fantastic also that you were encouraged and that it was like, okay, what steps can we do to help? I mean, that's how it should be, right? For people to follow their dreams and their passions.
Especially when you're young. When you're young and you have a dream or an idea of what you want to do, for any adult to say, you'll never succeed at that, or no, don't do that, that's really uncool. Mm-hmm. They're operating off of their own agenda.
Absolutely. And whether at any time in life, I think, if anyone has a dream that they want to pursue at any juncture of their life, I agree with you. It's a very suppressive thing to do, and it's very much about the other person's need, nothing to do with that.
Right. Now, I did have a teacher. So I the summer between junior and senior year of high school, I went and did the Carnegie Mellon theater program.
Ooh,
at Carnegie Mellon University.
Uh-huh.
And I had this voice teacher, speaking voice teacher, and she wrote on my end of the program review that I will never be an actress. I have the worst sounding voice ever. And I should just quit. I mean, when she said that to me, I just was like, all right, fuck you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. And I'm going to go do it. And you're still going to be stuck here teaching the Carnegie Mellon summer program. Like, you're not even teaching the curriculum program.
I always like that saying, consider the source.
Right.
What is that person's life that's telling you or being disparaging toward you? What do they have going on, I
went to NYU and they had a rule freshman year that you weren't allowed to work professionally. You were in the theater department. And I had already done some work professionally.
Right.
And within a month of being in New York, I booked my first TV pilot. And it was for a sitcom called Hi, Honey, I'm Home. And I had to leave school for 10 days to film the pilot. And it was a really big deal because we were graded on attendance. So I had to agree to take a D for the semester.
Oh my gosh.
For my studio work, not for the academic classes, but for the theater classes.
I know, but it's like getting penalized for actually getting work.
I left for 10 days, did the pilot, came back, finished off freshman year. Then the show got picked up and I had to take sophomore year off to go film. We did 12 episodes of the show. And then the show got canceled and I just deferred a semester. So I wanted to go back. And in order to go back into the studio, I had to meet with the teacher who tried to get me kicked out of the program, because they did. They tried to get me kicked out. And there was one teacher who had a lot of tenure. Her name was Pat Mullins. And she stood up for me.
Yay, Pat.
She said, if you kick her out, I quit. So but in order to be reinstated, I had to meet with this other teacher, who was the acting teacher, and I had to have a meeting with him. And he said to me, how do you know you're ready to work professionally? And I said, I'm young. They're not expecting much from me. They know I'm going to learn. They're expecting me to learn. But the bigger question is, what's your excuse?
Ooh.
And he was like, okay, you're right. Because I'm like, you can't be afraid to go out and work.
No.
There's so many people that are too afraid to actually go to audition and actually go do it. I don't have that fear. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of success. I'm not afraid of failure. So what's your problem? And then he admitted that one of the reasons why he was a teacher was because he was always too afraid to really go out.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you actually got to the core of what was going on there with him at you.
And I mean, listen, I was 19. That was a little bratty thing to say. I mean, I don't know if I would say that. Yeah. But I was mad they were trying to kick me out. Like I was just like, how dare you? So I was reinstated and got to finish my schooling.
What is a lesson that you've learned lately that has felt like important growth for your life?
I think I've learned. I think one of the most important lessons is to not have expectations of others. Living without expectations. And it applies to auditions too. And I think that's been so important in this world of self-taping that we're in, where, you do them at home and then you send them off into the universe and you don't know where they go. You just have to just do your best work and then just let it go and move on.
It's sort of like also just being, therefore you're in the present because you're not thinking about what the expectation is, what's going to happen next, what someone else might do. You're just being very present in the moment that you are, and then letting the next thing happen and unfold and letting it all
the only thing you can control is how you respond. Like, it's your response. I used to be really bad about losing out on a job. Not bad, but I used to get rushed. But I would give myself 24 hours where I would cry and I would be pissy about it. And then after 24 hours, wash my hands, walk away. Now I just try to just be like, okay, it just was up my part. Right? It's just, now it's like, I don't even give it that much weight anymore. Even though it's disappointing, you don't know what the package they're putting together. You don't know who else is in it, how you fit in, and you don't even know their reasons for it. So trying to just be like, okay, universe, moving on to the next. It just was up my part.
And also, I think having a more well-rounded life. I know when I was younger, my sole focus was work, and sort of having other things in your life make that, it isn't the be-all, end-all only. Like the regular real life and connections that you have are so much more important, really. And so it puts it all in perspective as you get older, I think, too. So, Julie, what's one of your favorite books?
I really love Shantaram.
Yes.
You read it?
Yes.
So good.
Amazing.
So they tried to make it into a TV show, and Apple TV recently did that. And I didn't mind it, but I mean, I prefer the book over the show. I'm an avid reader, so reading to me is like breathing.
Is there anything we haven't asked you that we should be asking you, or that you want to share that we haven't covered and didn't think of?
I feel like you really got in there. I feel like you really you reached in and got me.
I hope in a good way.
No, in a good way. Yes.
Okay. You made me think of that. Remember that game, Operation, where you just go in with did you ever play that?
I was really good at that game.
You were?
I was. My dad was I come from a family of surgeons.
Oh.
So I thought I was going to be a doctor at one point. Then I thought I'd rather just play a doctor on TV.
It's hard to imagine you that way because you're such a performer. I'm sure it would have been a whole different life and a whole different you, and that you would have that facility, but it just feels like you being a creative performer is such an integral part of your soul and who you are.
Listen, there was no great big backlash when I decided not to follow in the family footsteps of being a doctor. I think that was more of a pipe dream than me being an actor. Yeah. But there was that idea where I was, I'm going to be a doctor. And then it was, I can't stand the sight of blood. Although I've never been cast as a doctor.
No, I've actually played a doctor. Yeah, you need to play one.
No, I've played a scientist, but I never played a doctor. And I would like to play a doctor, but I would be terrible with all that doctor jargon.
Well, Julie, this has been unbelievable. It's been so much fun hanging out, as it always is, and time just flies by. And we got to talk about a lot of things that you and I haven't discussed before. So that was incredible, and it's just been so delightful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, when you announced that you were doing it, I was like, I wonder if she's going to ask me to be a guest.
But of course, and you've got to come back many times, and we can't wait to talk to you about all the rest of your stuff on the show and otherwise.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Mwah.
Bye.
See you next week when we'll do it again. Do it again.